Good evening. I'm Janine Wester, president of When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad. Welcome to When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad Education Series, What's at Stake? A virtual conversation with primary candidates from Florida House District 89, Palm Beach County Sheriff, and the Port of Palm Beach Commission Group 2. Thank you, Robin and her team that are behind the scenes assuring that this virtual platform is running in tip-top shape. When We All Vote, Palm Beach County Voting Squad is a nonpartisan organization with a focus to increase voter participation in Palm Beach County. Inspired by Michelle Obama, When We All Vote brings together individuals, institutions, brands, and organizations. Palm Beach County Voting Squad has brought 24 nonpartisan organizations together to build, inform, engage voters of every age. We're just getting started. We're bringing even more organizations into the voting process because when we all vote, we all do better. Tonight is the second of many series to come this voting series. Okay, enough of me rattling. Let's move into the excitement. Introducing our moderator for the evening is Alicia Watkins, representing the partnership with Gamma Gamma Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority. Alicia, take it away. Unmute, please. Please unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to introduce our esteemed moderator for today's candidate forum, Cheo Reed. Cheo brings a unique perspective to our discussions, having served as a dedicated Deputy Chief Assistant State Attorney in the 15th Judicial Circuit of Florida, diligently serving Palm Beach County for over a decade. His outstanding work in the legal field extends to his involvement in the Bar Association, including his prestigious role as a 2024-2025 president of the F. Malcolm Cunningham Senior Bar Association. Not only is Cheo a prominent figure in the legal arena, but he is also deeply committed to community engagement. His dedication is unwavering as he actively participates in educating parents, the public, and youth on vital topics such as internet safety and the consequences of crime. His contribution to the community engagement team for Palm Beach County's Criminal Justice Commission is a testament to his commitment to fostering transparency and accountability within the criminal justice system. Beyond his professional and community endeavors, Cheo's expertise is rooted in his educational background. He graduated from Florida Atlantic University and Florida A&M University College of Law, where he honed his passion for protecting the community and advocating for the reformation of youth within the justice system. He is an active member of his church's music ministry, demonstrating his multifaceted commitment to serving others. With his wealth of experience, his integrity, and dedication, I am confident that Cheo Reed will skillfully guide our discussions today as the moderator of our candidate forum. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Cheo Reed.
Ms. Watkins, thank you for that introduction, and good evening, everyone. Thank you to our audience for joining us for tonight's Candidates Forum. We will hear from candidates for Florida House District 89, Port of Palm Beach Group 2, and Palm Beach County Sheriff. The goal of this forum is to gain insight into the candidates' qualifications and platforms. Please note that all candidates were invited. So here are the rules for tonight's forum. Candidates participating this evening are broken into 3 groups. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. We will then move to the question and answer segment. There is no rebuttal. Candidates within each group will be asked pre-screened questions, and they can choose whether to respond. Each response will be limited to 1 minute. At the conclusion of the question and answer segment, each candidate will have 1 minute for their closing statement. We will have a timer displayed and ask candidates to respond once the timer begins. Please note that we will have a facilitator monitoring the time and the audio. Candidates, please be respectful and mindful of our time restrictions to avoid being muted. Now it's time to meet our candidates. We're going to start with Florida House District 89. And we will begin with the candidates for that race. They include Destiny Baker Sutton and Deborah Tendrick. District 89, Florida's House District 89, stretches from Southern Boulevard to the north to Hypoluxo Road to the south. It runs from Dixie Road to the east and almost to Jog Road to the west. This office is elected for a 2-year term. Please note that both primary candidates were invited to this forum. And we'll now begin with our opening statements. Ms. Baker Sutton, you will have 90 seconds for your opening statement. Please wait for the timer to begin.
Good evening, and thank you, When We All Vote, for putting this important forum on. I am Destiny Baker Sutton, and I am a third-generation Floridian. I grew up in District 89, went to daycare and elementary school there, K through 5. I am the wife of a teacher, and we are the proud parents of 2 young children. I'm a former prosecutor, where I held criminals accountable and kept our neighborhood safe. I am a former attorney for our county commissioners, where I protected taxpayer dollars in state and federal court. I'm a small business owner. I own a law firm where I pursue justice for victims who have been catastrophically injured. I know what it takes to balance a budget and run a successful business. I'm running for state representative to make sure that we lower the cost of housing, that women have the right to choose what we do with our bodies, that we are providing our future generations high-quality education, that we can enjoy world-class healthcare that does not break the bank, and that we address the skyrocketing insurance rates in Florida. Again, I am Destiny Baker Sutton, and I am asking for your vote for state representative. You can vote by mail, during early voting, or on Election Day on August 20th. And you can learn more at www.destinyforflorida.com. And I look forward to answering your questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker Sutton. So let's get to the questions, and you will have 1 minute to respond to each of the questions. Again, please remember to wait until the timer begins for your response. So the first question, what are your top legislative priorities and what bills are you prepared to file if elected to the State House?
Great question. It's hard to answer in 60 seconds, but let me tell you, the top issue that I find when I'm talking to people out in the community is affordable housing and the skyrocketing insurance. So I'll focus on that. Right now, the leader of the Democrat Party, Fentrice Driscoll, has proposed several pieces of legislation. And the 2 most important are House Bill 1477 and House Bill 1499 that I will support to help see those through and get passed into legislation. The first piece of legislation will create a commission that will identify all of the issues that we find and that we need to address so that we make the most educated decision regarding the skyrocketing insurance crisis. And the second piece of legislation will encourage affordability of housing by giving the local governments money to build affordable housing in our communities. So the partnership between the 2 things are the first 2 steps, lowering the cost of housing, building more homes, and working closely with local government to help people have affordable homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the second question. Describe for us your current involvement within the boundaries of District 89, with special attention on how you have worked prior to your candidacy to improve the lives of residents within that district.
Absolutely. I was, as I said, a 3rd-generation Floridian, born and raised in Palm Beach County. And when my family moved to Palm Beach County in the late 70s, we moved to District 89 in the Forest Hill Apartments, right between Nico's Pizza and Purdy Lane. I've been dedicated to my community all of my life, and in particular in District 89, I work closely with the Children's Home Society, which is located right in District 89, and we do a year-long partnership. These are children who are homeless and separated from their parents. So we help them get toys for tots, school supplies. We're currently building a library in the facility. We help them with hygiene products. I also serve in District 89 on the Children's Family Society of Palm Beach County. And what we do with CFS is we provide low and no cost mental health services to everybody in Palm Beach County, but we are located right in District 89. Those are just two of the things, and you can learn more about me on my website.
Thank you. On to question 3. The current makeup in the Florida House favors Republican legislators. You're a candidate in the Democratic Party. If elected into the current makeup, you would conceivably have some difficulty passing bills that are more aligned with your party's interests. If elected, what is your strategy to carry your bills through the legislative process and bring resources back to District 89?
It's a great question. Right now in the Florida House, there's 85 Republicans and 35 Democrats. And so you absolutely have to have the ability to work across party lines. And I can tell you right now that I have the support of both Democrats and Republicans. And as a lawyer, I have 20 years of experience doing just that. As a lawyer, what we have to do is we have to convince an opponent, an opposing counsel, somebody with a differing viewpoint than us to accept what we're trying to say, or we have to convince a judge or a jury. And I've got 20 years of doing that, working across party lines, working across the aisle, working with people who have differing opposing viewpoints, and I will bring that experience to Tallahassee. The issues that I want to focus on are issues that all of us care about: education, safety in our communities, affordable housing, and mental health. These are things that, regardless of your party affiliation, you're going to want to support.
Thank you. On to question number 4, which is our last pre-screen question. Thinking back over the last legislative session, which bills do you support and which do you oppose?
Well, I can tell you that one of the issues and one of the main focal points, working with Representative David Silvers, who has my support, and I have his support, is that mental health is a huge problem. And so there's some legislation that we've been working on, and he's been working on, regarding Baker Acts. If you're a child and you're in school and you get Baker Acted, law enforcement comes to arrest you, put you in handcuffs, put you in the back of the patrol car to take you to a mental health facility, and we need to get rid of that. When something like that happens at school, then you need to be able to be transported in a regular vehicle for that. Another issue that we see is the changes to education, the changes to what curriculum can be taught to our children. My husband is a history teacher at Inlet Grove, and he is specifically being instructed to teach curriculum that does not uplift the Black and Brown community or any community. And that is something that I intend to focus on and correct.
Thank you. If you give me just a moment to check to see whether we have any audience questions. Okay, having received none, we will move on to our closing statements.
All right.
In your comments, please tell us why you are the best candidate and what differentiates you from your opponent. You'll have 1 minute. Please wait for our timer to start to begin your response.
I am the best candidate for the job because I have the professional experience that matters. I'm the only candidate who has worked for over a decade as a prosecutor, keeping dangerous criminals off the streets. I'm the only candidate with experience protecting taxpayer dollars, which I did as an attorney representing our county commissioners. And I am the only candidate who is a small business owner who can put my business experience to work for you. I have spent a lifetime giving back to my community, supporting our underprivileged youth, advocating for mental health services, and mentoring young women. I have relationships that matter. I'm proudly endorsed by our current state representative, David Silvers, local police, women's and business groups, equality organizations, 2 U.S. Congresswomen, 5 state representatives, our tax collector, Ann Gannon, 6 local mayors, 11 local commissioners, and over 150 community leaders, because they all know that I can get the job done. Please vote Destiny Baker Sutton for state representative. You can vote by mail, early, or on August 20th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Destiny Baker Sutton. Although Deborah Tendrick could not be with us tonight, she has drafted a statement about her campaign. Her intern, Michaela Lewis, will deliver her message. Ms. Lewis, please wait for the timer, and then you may begin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am honored to represent Deborah Tendrick tonight as her intern and doctoral student at Lane University. She is running for House of Representatives for District 89 and could not be here tonight, unfortunately, but I am thrilled to speak on her behalf. I have known Deborah for several years, beginning when I volunteered at a nonprofit organization, Eat Better, Live Better. From the very first day I met her, I was inspired by her unwavering dedication to the community. Deborah is just a leader. She is a beacon of hope and a tireless advocate for those in need. And when Deborah shared with me her decision to run for office, I was ecstatic because I know she is the best person for the job. And her candidacy was born out of a genuine desire to serve and driven by the countless voices from our community urging her to step forward. And Deborah works tirelessly day and night, always putting the needs of others first, whether it is through her nonprofit efforts or her daily interactions with her neighbors in District 89. And the community deserves a candidate who shows up, and Deborah has and will continue to do so. She has engaged in meaningful discussions with dozens of constituents about the future of District 89 and democracy at large by knocking on doors, attending community events, and calling the voters directly. I believe in Deborah because I have witnessed firsthand her relentless pursuit of positive change. And I truly believe that she is the best individual for this job. But thank you for having me speak on her behalf today.
Ms. Lewis, thank you for appearing on behalf of Ms. Deborah Tendrick. And thank you to all of the candidates for Florida House District 89. You all have a good evening. We're now moving on to Group 2. The candidates for Port of Palm Beach. We'll now begin with this second group of candidates who are vying for the Port of Palm Beach Group 2 seat. We have 2 candidates, Ms. Varissa Das and Mr. Jeffrey Jackson. Please note that all candidates were invited to this forum. We're going to begin with opening statements, first from Ms. Das, followed by Mr. Jackson. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to present their opening statement. Candidates, please wait for the timer before you begin. Ms. Das.
Hello, everyone. My name is Commissioner Varissa Das. I am the incumbent Port Commissioner at the Port of Palm Beach. I was appointed to serve in December 2022. At that time, the majority of the commission determined I was the individual best suited and most qualified to serve alongside them as commissioner. And that was because I already served on 2 port committees. I attended all the meetings. I knew our future plans at the port. And under my leadership, the port just had its most profitable year in history. Now, this matters because we don't levy taxes. We are the only government agency in Palm Beach County that pays for itself. And please be aware of anyone that tells you that this is money you can just give away. When all development at the port, because we're paying for ourselves, we need it to put up so that the state and federal government can match it so that we can have any development at all at the port. Now, specifically for this community, I want to talk about some things that I've done. The first thing that's very important to me is I ensure that all structures that we build at the port facility is attractive to the Riviera community. For example, the Ozinga terminal, that big blue terminal. 70 to 80% of our contracts are awarded to minority-owned businesses. 50% of our government 70% of our employees are minorities. 50% of our government contracts are awarded to minority small-owned businesses. I recently took time to organize a Riviera job fair with the Riviera Police Department. I recruited our tenants to participate in that. I also stopped long railroad stop times so that no one in Palm Beach County has to wait longer than 5 minutes at a railroad stop. Additionally, every month we use, oh, sorry. There's so much information.
Thank you, Ms. Das, and thank you for being cognizant of our timer. We're going to go to Mr. Jeffrey Jackson. You will have 90 seconds to present your opening statement. Mr. Jackson.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Jackson. I Upon graduating high school, I went to the United States Marine Corps. I was a decorated Marine. Upon leaving the Marine Corps, I joined the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. While at the Sheriff's Office, I raised to the rank of captain. I commanded the largest division, meaning both civilian and sworn personnel. I also had the largest budget, and we did well at the Sheriff's Office. Upon leaving the Sheriff's Office, I received the Legion of Merit Award from Sheriff Rick Bradshaw. Currently, I am the Revere Beach Housing Authority president. And the Revere Beach Housing Authority has developed multiple sites, one being Heron Estates, a $46 million site. The job of president is to raise money to build affordable housing. Affordable housing is one of our most important things that we're facing right now. And currently I'm working on the Judge Rogers site. The county commission has given us $13 million to develop that site. And it's gonna come in probably about 60 million. So we're really impacting the community. And under my leadership, I am impacting those things in Palm Beach County that are most important to our citizens. I have raised money for Toys for Tots and worked there every year to get those toys out to all the kids. I serve on the UB Kinsey Educational Board. I serve on the Revere Beach Penny Surcharge Committee and a host of other boards, and we've done very well on all of them. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, and also thank you, Ms. Doss. We're going to move on to our questions now, candidates. Each of you will have 1 minute to present your answer to these questions. Please wait for the timer before you begin. Question number 1, we're going to start with you, Ms. Doss. What unique qualifications and expertise do you possess that make you well suited for this office?
Absolutely. So I'm actually a contract lawyer. So that matters because 100% of our business dealings at the port are contractually governed. So that ensures that I am less likely to allow the port to breach our contractual obligations and the leases and business agreements that we enter into. Additionally, I think I'm the only port commissioner in history that actually took the time to serve on committees, 2 port committees, before I ran for this seat so that I would know in my full capacity what we do at the port. Additionally, as I said previously, the port just had our most profitable year ever. We know exactly what we are doing. We have current plans to potentially construct a hotel or luxury condo development at the port site, as well as bring in more cruise ships. There are specific ships that we are looking at. And we just need to stay on this path and make sure that we get this done. I am the one that will get this done. There are also some infrastructure improvements and some grant money that we need to get to further be able to stack our containers higher and output more cargo, ensuring that the port remains even more profitable. And this is what we need to work towards in the future.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Jackson. What unique qualifications and expertise do you possess that make you well suited for this office? Please wait for the timer.
Proven leadership, teamwork, my vision, and all the things that I've accomplished. I'm a great communicator and I'm a great collaborator. If you look at the projects that I've been able to do in Palm Beach County, right now I have more than I have 4 deals going that's top size of $30 million plus. So I've demonstrated I can raise money. I've demonstrated that I could close deals. And I certainly have demonstrated that I can stay within the confines of the law. And I've done that as a deputy sheriff, raising to the rank of captain. In all of our dealings, I'm working with attorneys and I'm also working with commissioners. All of the legislation I've ever taken to Tallahassee as a union representative or to Washington, I've gotten it passed. I've gotten those things passed, to include things like the drop plan that's affecting teachers, firefighters, and everyone. No one else has impacted our citizens like I have, and I'm headed to Washington Thursday morning to continue this role.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, we're going to start with you for question number 2. What problems, difficulties, or challenges do you see in the Port of Palm Beach, and what do you propose to do about them?
Great question. So land space, the port needs to expand. We have a problem with that. I started talking about an inlet port in 2007. And at that time, we were talking about that in spaces like taking that kind of information to Tallahassee, talking about it here at home. At some point, there was some synergy behind it. There was an attempted deal that fell through out in the South Bay area because that's where we were thinking about putting an inlet port before. And maybe we could revisit that, but we certainly need to look at spaces here in West Palm Beach or in Riviera Beach that we can supplant to expand the port and allow us to grow the port forward. I'm about the development. That's what we need to do. We need to redevelop the port and make best use of our cargo in spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Doss, same question for you. What problems, difficulties, or challenges do you see in the Port of Palm Beach, and what do you propose to do about them?
Yeah, so I'm very happy you brought that up. You know, logistically, we are 165 acres, so we are limited in space. We actually just acquired an additional 11 parcels, and we are in the process of finalizing those additional parcels. Now, because I'm from downtown, okay, I'm on the board of the Downtown Development Authority. When you're limited in space, what do? You go vertical. So any warehouses that we build at the port, I was with my executive director yesterday, actually. I want them to be high as to maximize the space we can get out of that warehouse. Like I want them to be a couple floors so that we can output more things. Additionally, there's airport grade cement. Now currently we can only handle our containers can only be stacked like 2 or 3 on top of each other. This airport grade cement is going to allow us to stack more containers because it can handle more weight. It's designed for the weight of airplanes. Next, the inland port, that's very interesting because I was actually with the BDD yesterday discussing a potential location for the inland port at the South Florida Waste Management Facility, which I am in favor of. Now, logistically, that is a better space than the one out in Belglade. We also have rail there. We can just get it done.
Thank you. Candidates, you're doing good with our timer. Thank you both. We're going to go on to question number 3. And Ms. Doss, we're going to begin with you on this question. The Port of Palm Beach is experiencing unprecedented growth. Revenue has increased while expenses have decreased. Earlier reports credit this to strategic improvements and a thriving cruise industry. If elected, what strategies would you propose and employ to ensure the port continues on its path of growth?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, we're looking at an additional cruise ship. Each of those cruise ships brings in like $4 million a year for parking at least. And then additionally, we're bringing in a third cement carrier. Our last cement carrier, Ozinga, that brought in $9 million. So we want to continue with bringing in and recruiting businesses that are a good fit for the port. But then we also, we got to diversify your portfolio essentially. When you're limited in space, I'm looking at another option too. I want us to be a cruise port. We should have been a cruise port given our proximity to the Caribbean. So there's a potential for some development, whether it be hotel or condo development at the port. That is another thing we can have, another tool we can have in our toolkit to further maximize our profit at the port. And also, fortifying the port infrastructure, making us stronger so that we can handle more cargo output, especially since we're limited in space. That is something I want to do. We can do that through federal funding.
Thank you, Ms. Doss. And Mr. Jackson, I will repeat the question for you. The Port of Palm Beach is experiencing unprecedented growth. Revenue has increased while expenses have decreased. Earlier reports credit this to strategic improvements and a thriving cruise industry. If elected, what strategies would you propose and employ to ensure the port continues on its path of growth?
Just waiting on the timer. I would continue to go after grant and government fundings, all sorts. I've demonstrated that I could raise money in large sums of money in all of my businesses and the success that we're currently having at the Housing Authority. Well, at the port, I would want to have a goal of increasing the cargo. I would have a goal of increasing the travel opportunity, and I would be bringing in a ship, like Ms. Doss said. I totally agree with that. I would look at building a hotel there, business inspiring other business incubators and retail. We would have restaurants. It would be a destination, whether people are traveling or not. It would be someplace, we'd have spaces that people would want to go to. Our port would be a centerpiece in the city of Revere Beach, and an iconic destination to visit. And I would look for every opportunity to grow our port forward, and I work with the other commissioners in brainstorming and great, new ideals to accomplish those goals.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Jackson, we're going to start with you on our last pre-screen question. What is your stance on adopting single-member districts within the Port District to enhance local representation and possibly foster a stronger connection between the Port of Palm Beach and its constituents?
Wow, great question. I think most people on that issue would find themselves a little bit torn, just a little bit anyway. So on one hand, you will have a situation where you have people in their different places. Like if you're from out west, you might want someone that might represent you if you're in the Glades area. But on the other hand, the argument will be the talent pool. Your talent pool might be, you might have 3 people that are neighbors essentially, and would all be great candidates, and they would work well together and have a great collaboration to push our port forward. After thinking about all of that, I think I would leave well enough alone. I think the port is doing well now, and if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I think we can look to have the best talent pool come together and move our port forward. So I would not support it. I think we're fine now.
Okay, and same question for you, Ms. Doss. What is your stance on adopting single-member districts in the Port District to enhance local representation and possibly foster a stronger connection between the Port of Palm Beach and its constituents?
Yeah, so I think I would actually be in favor of single member districts. So people don't realize how large the port is. Okay, we go all the way up from south of Old Donald Ross Road, all the way south to north of Southern, all the way from Palm Beach Island to Lake Okeechobee. So it's huge, okay? And there's each of our different cities, we have 7 different cities that we encompass. They each have their own interests, their own concerns. Now they all derive countywide benefit. They all derive an benefit from the port because we have our cement and our asphalt. It goes countywide. But I think that would be able to ensure that each of our cities with different perspectives are able to share that and fully come together to form the Port District.
Thank you, Ms. Doss. We do have an audience question, and Ms. Doss, I'm going to start with you for this question. What do you suggest the Port District do to increase jobs? Please wait for the timer for your response.
Okay, so we are a creator of 7,000 direct and indirect jobs. This past year that I've been on the commission, we created 200 direct and indirect jobs through bringing in Ozinga, the cruise ship, and we're also expanding our railway right now, which also created jobs as well. That also took 29,000 trucks off of the road. So to create additional jobs, I would say we're already doing that. One of the considerations I take when we're voting on which businesses we bring in is how many local jobs are they going to generate for us. So and I also make sure to emphasize supporting our industries that like agriculture that support thousands of jobs out there. We have to take all of those considerations into account when we're deciding which business entities are the best fit for the port. But we are going to be having some natural growth, some pretty good growth, especially if I stay on. So that job creation is definitely being done. Now, what's most important is taking it out to the community, like I do, going to churches, going to job fairs, making sure that the word gets out about the openings.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Jackson. What do you suggest the Port District do to increase jobs?
Well, I tell you, we have to start, but we just can't start going to churches and going to showing up at city council meetings when it's election time. We got to do it all the time. And if I'm elected, that's the kind of stuff I would be doing. I have demonstrated that I would utilize minority vendors. On all of my projects, I've used minorities, be it Heron Estates, or just an example being Brown Electric did that deal. And that was about what was a really big deal. It's a big contract. It's $46 million. But I would continue to as Ms. Doss said, we have an issue with rail. I would give all my tenants every opportunity to expand their business, and I would look to see how many people they're bringing in, and we would want to identify companies that would hire, that would certainly hire minorities, and that'd be a big focus on that. I believe the Glaze is underserved, and we would certainly look to see how we could benefit the Glaze area. They are a great working force, hardworking people, and they deserve better than what we've delivered so far.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We do have another audience question that I want to throw out there to both of you candidates. And Mr. Jackson, we're going to start with you for this question. Aside from focusing on jobs, how would you work to enhance the relationship between the municipalities and the Port District?
I would have a collaboratory that would bring everyone together. We would have a moderator like yourself to really streamline and help us to bring all of our ideals and synergy together. And if doing that and having those strategic planning sessions and working through it, everybody identifying their problems and then working to solve them, everybody being a part of it. One city may have a need that another city does not have. We know that Western Palm Beach County, we need jobs out there, we need affordable housing. All of these things we can bring together. So if we rebuild the port and we have apartment buildings out there, all of that can bring, bring more jobs to Palm Beach County, bring more jobs to the city of Riviera Beach, and it would help us just build the port in a great way going forward. We just need to come together, put our heads together, and we're talented enough to think through our problems. We just got to work together and move forward. We can't be contentious.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And same question for you, Ms. Doss. I'll repeat the question. Outside of your focus on increasing jobs, what would you do or what work would you do to enhance the relationship between the Port District and the municipalities?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that. I'm actually the Riviera liaison to the Port of Palm Beach. So I regularly, I've been at least 10 Riviera Commission meetings since I swore in as commissioner. So it's important to go and regularly go. And I go to commission meetings in all of my 7 districts, in all my 7 cities. It's important to go and get out, the information about what we're doing. Something around the time that we're doing our paid internship program, I make sure that I'm very vocal and active to going to the commission meetings and the churches, and also going around to different organizations and letting them know that they need to submit their applications now. All the kids that are interested in that need to submit their applications. Now, this is something, it's funny because I actually met with one of our business leaders about 2 weeks ago, and this was an idea he pitched to me, was forming a commission with different entities. So having like some business owners, some tenants, and then also residents from the community, and having them form a commission that advises the port and makes recommendations. And I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you, Ms. Doss, and thank you to both of you candidates. We're now going to move to our closing statements. In your comments, please tell us why you are the best candidate and what differentiates you from your opponent. You'll have 1 minute for your closing statement, and Ms. Doss, we're going to begin with you. Please watch out for the timer.
So, what distinguishes me from every other person running in this race is I'm the one doing the job. And, it's funny hearing about these abstract ideas that so many candidates come up with when I'm the one with specific plans. Like, yeah, it would be nice to bring in a cruise ship. I'm telling you specifically which vessels we're looking at and where they're located. For example, there's one in Jacksonville we are looking at right now. It's a Carnival line. So I'm very, very involved in the port. I want you to I go out of my way to have a hand in every single agenda item that we vote on and make sure that we are pushing this port forward and and all of our plans are coming to fruition. Another thing that distinguishes me, I personally took the time to serve on committees, attend the meetings for about a year, and know exactly what I was doing and what we were about at the port before I ran for this seat. And I cannot underscore the importance of the significance of making sure to know about the nuances. Our port is important. It is technical. This is something you have to actually spend time knowing about.
Thank you, Ms. Doss. Mr. Jackson, your closing statement. You'll have 1 minute. Please watch out for the timer.
Thank you. I would just say I can't serve. I'm serving on more than a dozen boards, and you also have to be given the opportunity to, and they have to have a vacancy, and you have to be allowed to serve on the board. If that opportunity, or you don't find out about that information, even though you're going to meetings, you might not get to serve on that board. But I can tell you, the last thing I needed to do, if you look at my last 2-3 years, is serve on another board. I have always served on boards and did very well on all of them, be it Kiwanis, be it at the Sheriff's Office. I am raising $300,000 a year for kids going to college. In the last 20 years, I've given out more than $3 million for kids going to college. The things that separate me from anyone else is that if you look at my accomplishments, and I am doing things that's actually impacting citizens. No one is sending kids to college like I'm doing. No one is raising the money like I'm doing, and no one is addressing affordable housing like I am. And so I am being impactful where it counts.
Thank you, candidates. Ms. Doss and Mr. Jackson, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our third section of our candidate forum. And this is the race for the Palm Beach County Sheriff. And this is our final group for this evening. Candidates for Palm Beach County Sheriff include Laurel Diaz, Alex Freeman, and Michael Gauger, who are joining us this evening. Please note that all candidates were invited to this forum. Sheriff Bradshaw sends his regrets as he is working this evening. We're going to begin with opening statements from Mr. Diaz, followed by Mr. Freeman, and then Mr. Gauger. Each of our candidates with us this evening will have 90 seconds to give their opening statements. 90 seconds, candidates. Please wait for the timer before you begin. Again, we are going to begin with our opening statement first from Mr. Diaz.
Looking for the timer.
You got it, Mr. Diaz.
Okay, there we go. Thank you for this awesome opportunity. Good evening, everyone. My name is Laurel Diaz. I am running for Sheriff of Palm Beach County. I lived in Palm Beach County for approximately 50 years. I was born in Cuba, arrived in West Palm Beach in 1970. I graduated from Lake Worth High School. I actually went to Roosevelt Elementary in West Palm, Coniston Middle School, and again, graduated from Lake Worth High School. I joined the U.S. Army Military Police Corps, where I successfully completed 3 years of service, distinguished service. At that time, I was hired with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, where I then stayed the following 27 and a half years working at the Sheriff's Office and rose through the ranks from patrol officer all the way to command duty officer. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice, a Master's degree in Homeland Security, specializing in anti-terrorism and response to natural disasters. I am a proud husband, proud father, and proud grandfather of 2 grandchildren. Once again, Palm Beach County is my home, always has been. I will say this to you, I believe in transparency, I believe in accountability, I believe in being honest with the public. I'm not a politician, never have been, never will be. I do know the shortfalls of the Sheriff's Office, and I also know exactly what the needs are for our community. I grew up very poor, very humble in Palm Beach County, coming in from Cuba as an immigrant. The problems that we're facing today are enormous. Homeland security is a serious issue. We have former President Trump living in Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach County, which makes it extremely dangerous and elevates our threat level for terrorist attack or domestic attack. I think I have the right education, the right drive. I commanded the toughest.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Candidates, I just want to remind you to make sure you're watching the timer. The folks working in the background will unfortunately have to mute you if you go too far past our timer. Thank you, Mr. Diaz. We're going to move on to the opening statement from Mr. Alex Freeman. Please pay attention to the timer, and you will have 90 seconds.
Good evening, and thank you all for this opportunity and this platform. I am Alex Freeman, and many of you all know that I have a long-standing commitment of wanting to serve Palm Beach County as your transparent, accountable, and accessible sheriff. This is my 3rd time running. I grew up in Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, 55 years. I went to high school and elementary and junior high school here. I started my career in 1993 at the Riviera Beach Police Department, where I rose through the ranks, 3rd in command as Major of Police upon my retirement in 2015. I went off to Tallahassee and became the chief of police there. But not only the chief of police there, I was also the public safety director there, overseeing the police department and the fire department, an experience that neither one of my other candidates have in this race. I came back to Palm Beach County a year and a half ago, and I got a job in Jupiter Inlet Colony, their first African-American police officer, for 1 month. And then 1 month later, they appointed me to deputy chief of police. Now, I believe that it is time for a change. Sheriff Bradshaw has been in law enforcement 54 years, 1 year less than I'm old. And it's just time for a change. It's time for fresh new ideas. It's time for a fresh wave of leadership. And I believe that I'm the agent of change that are going to bring Palm Beach County and its residents together, whereas the county has trust and faith in the Palm Beach County Sheriff Office under my administration.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. And finally, Mr. Gauger, your opening statements, you will have 90 seconds, and please watch out for the timer. Mr. Gauger, you're on mute.
Hit unmute. There we go.
There you
Am
go.
I on?
You're
Okay.
on.
Michael Gauger here, and thank you for this opportunity to join your group. Why would I run for sheriff? Well, I've spent decades, 5 decades, as a matter of fact, working my way through all the different positions in the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I started at the bottom and worked my way up to the chief deputy's position. I served for 16 years as chief deputy. While I rose through those ranks, I was one of those innovative thinkers. I brought change to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. I developed programs that made a huge difference in all of our communities. I brought community policing to the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office in the late 80s, early 90s. We advanced that to 27 neighborhoods that were the most difficult neighborhoods in our county. We cleaned up the drug dealing, we cleaned up the crime, reduced crime 80 to 90%. We built partnerships, not just with the residents, but with all the government agencies that could help us, because we can't do these things ourselves. I have the administrative experience. I was in an administrative position for 30 years. And I think that my experience speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Candidates, we're going to jump right into the questions. Each of you will have 1 minute to answer the question. Please make sure that you're paying attention to the timer. Question number 1, we're going to start with you first, Mr. Freeman.
Yes, sir.
What strategies do you plan to implement to improve and maintain community relations and trust between law enforcement and the public?
You know, community policing is one strategy, but we have to get the police officers out of the cars now. When we talk about community policing, so we can develop a relationship with our communities. And then we also have to go back to human diversity training and racial bias training so that law enforcement professionals can understand and have a greater idea of the communities they're policing once they go through that training. And in addition to that, we're going to create a Sheriff Night Out program that is going to require myself and my executive staff to be in every community 1 night a month to address any concerns and to hear from the voters who will ultimately serve as my employer, so they can share with us about our level of service, or if they just want to make a complaint. And that is those are just a couple of ways that we could begin to build relationship with our communities, and also, as the sheriff, hold everyone accountable to providing quality law enforcement services.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Gauger, the question is now yours. What strategies do you plan to implement to improve and maintain community relations and trust between law enforcement and the public?
Well, first of all, transparency. Transparency in all divisions of the agency. I talked about, I was the one who brought community policing. In fact, I taught it to many municipalities here in this county. I taught it at the college. And in addition, I taught community and human relations at the college. I taught all those classes. I was the one who brought in crisis intervention training. I brought in mental health first aid. I brought in sensitivity cultural training. We brought those things into the department. If you go and check the neighborhoods or check my websites, you will see folks that do videos and have explained just how much I changed their communities and built relationships in those communities and built the partnerships that needed to make change.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Mr. Diaz, we now turn to you. What strategies do you plan to implement to improve and maintain community relations and trust between law enforcement and the public? You're on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Thank you for this opportunity once again. So I would take it a step further than both of the other candidates. I would also include our commanders, our district commanders, to get out of their office, attend all homeowners association meetings, go into the neighborhoods that require more attentions than others, especially those neighborhoods that have a higher crime statistic. Make sure that we communicate with those community leaders in those community and make sure that we do build that partnership. But we also need to make sure that the entire agency operates as a community policing agency. Take a look how many times you see officers with their windows down. Very seldom. Usually the windows are up. They very seldom get out of their cars and interact with the general public. I want to make sure that we get out there and we actually speak. When we're not on a call, we make contact with the children, we make contact with the elderly and the community. And I would also put a panel together of leaders throughout the community to meet with me on a quarterly basis to discuss their concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. We're going to go on to question 2. And Mr. Gauger, we're going to start with you for this question first. And this one is near and dear to my heart after spending several years working with juveniles and young adults and violence. Here's the question. What is your plan for addressing gun violence in our communities, specifically gun violence involving juveniles and young adults? Mr. Gauger, the question is yours first.
Well, I think if you look at my history, we changed the behavior of youth in many of those neighborhoods. After we cleaned up the drug dealing, after we, where the older drug dealers were using juveniles to commit crimes and sell the drugs for them and be lookouts. So what we had to do at a time like that was we developed programs, after school programs, we brought in police athletic programs. I had 4 boxing programs that we developed in this county that took some of the toughest kids who were headed to gangs and put them in there and got them through their education, got them in their, and handled it that way. We changed lives. And by having that relationship with police officers and letting them know that you're not the enemy, it works, folks. It works. Look at the history and what we did in those communities. Go to the communities and ask those folks. Some of my opponents have never been seen in those neighborhoods under those circumstances. I was.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. The question is now yours, Mr. Diaz. What is your plan for addressing gun violence in our communities, specifically gun violence involving juveniles and young adults?
Most definitely create a much heavier dialogue with parents, making sure the parents are educated and awareness. If they have weapons, understanding how better to secure those weapons. Let them know that they are ultimately responsible for their children, especially the juveniles, making sure that they understand that there is no rights for a juvenile in your home as a parent, that you have the right to go through their rooms and through their vehicles and so forth and search and make sure that they don't have weapons, and understanding the seriousness of not only just crime happening, but how tragic it can be. And actually, the parents can actually be held accountable if a juvenile acts out with a firearm that the parents have control of. So it's a heavy duty education and awareness put out through the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Mr. Freeman, the question is now yours. What is your plan for addressing gun violence in our communities, specifically gun violence involving juveniles and young adults?
Mr. Gauger said that myself and Mr. Diaz has never been in those communities. I was born and raised in those communities, and I worked in those communities for 22 years in the city of Riviera Beach. And I totally agree with Mr. Diaz, but I also want to take it a step further. There was a program many years ago known as DARE, which is Drug Abuse Resistance Education Program, where law enforcement practitioners went into the school and educated those young boys and girls on the consequences of getting involved with drugs. Well, I would like to see the sheriff office work in collaboration with the school board as well as the school board police department, and that we work in collaboration, go into the school and educate those. There'll be a curriculum that we educate those young men and women on the violence of using guns and the consequences that come with that, and how it can destroy their lives.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. We're going to move on to question number 3. Mr. Diaz, I'm going to start with you first on this question. And here's the question. Homelessness continues to be an issue in our community. In March of 2024, Governor Ron DeSantis signed House Bill 1365, the Unauthorized Public Camping and Public Sleeping, into law. This bill centers around prohibiting homeless individuals from camping on city streets, sidewalks, and parks, and instead would seek to place them in temporary shelters monitored by law enforcement agencies. What steps would you take to ensure proper implementation of this law? The question is yours, Mr. Diaz.
Thank you for that question once again. First of all, the agency alone cannot handle that. That's an unreasonable request by our governor. That's something that we have to bring in our private sector and our community and our county, and work with that private sector to assist us in that endeavor. We don't have the budget to just simply house the homeless. It doesn't work that way. Now, the most important thing is we need to identify why they're homeless. My plan is to get them treatment. If it's an alcohol issue, get them alcoholic treatment. If it's a drug treatment, let's get them help for the drug treatment. Whatever the case may be, if it's an employment issue, let's go ahead and work with our business partners to try to get them employment. Did you know that most of, or a large percentage of the homeless are military vets? Putting them in the county jail just for the night, it's not going to fix anything. There are times where you do have no choice but to arrest them, depending on what they're doing. I am in full support of assisting that goal, but I can make it very clear that the sheriff's office by itself cannot succeed in this goal.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. And the question now turns to you, Mr. Freeman, and I'll repeat this question. Homelessness continues to be an issue in our community. In March of 2024, the governor signed House Bill 1365, the Unauthorized Public Camping and Public Sleeping, into law. This bill would prohibit homeless individuals from camping on city streets, sidewalks, and parks, and would place them in temporary shelters monitored by law enforcement agencies. What steps would you take to ensure proper implementation of this law?
This is definitely a society issue. And if we could have arrested our way out of this, it would have solved the problem a long time ago. What we have to do is have policy in place. Because this is a new law, we have to have policies in place that allow our deputies to have the discretion in identifying shelter for these individuals, like the Lord House, the Homeless Coalition of Palm Beach County, the Children and Families Organization. You know, it would be a last resort for us to initiate an arrest on anyone that is suffering from mental illness. From being homeless. I also like this idea that Mayor Sachs, Palm Beach County Mayor Sachs, has in terms of working with builders to have homes built. Those metal homes, one bedroom metal homes for those folks that are suffering from homeless. You know, I would like to work with her and others to make sure that comes to fruition. I know it's an initiative that she's starting, and as sheriff, I would like to work with her in terms of my book.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Your time is up. And let's see. Mr. Gauger, the question is now yours. Did you need for me to repeat the question for you?
Nope, I have it. Well, I think I spoke of this already. I built the partnerships with the county, state, and federal governments that made a difference. When we had a homeless issue as a lieutenant in community policing, that partnershiping that I did, when we had the homeless had taken over parks next to a Head Start program and had taken over the ball fields and parks in John Prince Park, the county gave us orders not to do anything and not to touch them because Miami had been sued. I went to Jim Green, the attorney for ACLU, and took him out there, and together we worked with the county and developed a homeless outreach team. And then they went out and started working with us in law enforcement, finding alternatives, offering them alternatives to housing, assistance, and making a change. And that's the kind of thing that is important, building partnerships, folks. We can't do it ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. We're going to move on to question number 4, which is our last pre-screen question, and then we're going to try to get through as many of our audience questions as possible. Question number 4, Mr. Freeman, we're going to begin with you. Hiring practices have frustrated some of the agency's personnel. There are some who believe that nepotism is used to hire relatives of those in leadership into positions that either never existed or were not advertised. Additionally, some feel that candidates on eligibility lists are no longer chosen from a ranking, but rather are chosen based on a choice made by a department head. As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for Palm Beach County, how would you address these hiring concerns and instill confidence in a fair and ethical hiring process?
Am I muted?
You're on now.
Okay. Historically, that has been a concern and an issue with the Palm Beach County Sheriff Office for over 100 years. And under my leadership, that will not happen. There should be policy in place to address that. Well, let me just say this. I'm sure there's policy in place, but they have not been addressed because there is favoritism and nepotism in the Palm Beach County Sheriff Office. And any one of my opponents the 2 opponents that are here, they would tell you that if they're honest. And I know Diaz will be honest about it. So under my administration, we will address that concern to the point that it will not be happening. We're going to hold folks accountable. And when people are demoted and promoted in the sheriff office, it's going to be by way of Sheriff Freeman and no one else.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Gauger, the question is now yours. Would you want me to repeat it for you?
Nope, I have the question. I would explain that it's not just nepotism that has the influence of promotions and transfers and discipline. The union right now at the sheriff's office has a tremendous amount of say, and it's not always nepotism, it's the good old buddy system for these transfers, promotions, and it's created a tremendous rift in that agency. It needs to stop. It needs to be fair and equitable. Testing needs to go outside, not be administered by people internally in the agency, because you can't trust that system, because it's just too easy to give the answers and to give heads up to people that are going through the process. So it needs to stop. You need to have a system that's fair and equitable in all those promotions, based on testing, based on past performance, and not the good old boy system.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. The question is now yours, Mr. Diaz. Do you want me to repeat it for you?
No, thank you. First of all, definitely it is true. It does happen. One of the things that I want to bring back is a sponsorship program. We have a lot of young men and women that do not get an opportunity to work at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office because they're not certified. I was one of those when I was younger. Richard P. Willie actually hired me, sponsored me, put me through the academy, and paid me a stipend so that my family would go with instead of without. We need to refocus on that and bring that back. It's too easy to be selective and give opportunities to those who are in better positions than others, and that's just truly not fair. We're losing a lot of great candidates. Also, you're speaking to a gentleman who sat number 1 on the sergeant's list, while I had to sit there and watch number 52 and number 68 be promoted over me. So everything that you were saying is 100% true, and as your sheriff, I'll have zero tolerance for that.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. All right, now we're going to try to tackle some of our audience questions. Please be patient with us. Speaking of testing, there's a general understanding in the public that upon being hired or prior to being hired, officers are given some sort of mental or some level of mental health testing. Would you require that officers or deputies undergo mental health evaluations at different intervals of their employment at the sheriff's office? Mr. Gauger, we're going to start with you first.
It certainly wouldn't hurt. Currently, we don't even have physical testing on an annual or a biannual basis. There's certain divisions that have tremendous stress. We have those who examine computer crimes against children. especially the sexual crimes. You know, that has an impact over a long period of time. And we've lost a couple investigators who were tremendously impacted by that. And we didn't give them the help that they deserved. Yes, if they're involved in shootings, if they're involved in tragic incidents, if they're involved in trauma, you know, train our individuals, train. Peer counseling is a big thing. And we used to do that and they've done away with it, but I would bring it back, you know, train people what to look for. We've had some suicides and we shouldn't have had those.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. The question is now yours, Mr. Freeman.
Yes, so I agree with that, and I believe that law enforcement should, on an annual basis, on their annual start date of hire, they should go through a psychological evaluation every year to ensure that they are still fit for duty and capable of serving as a law enforcement practitioner here in the state of Florida and Palm Beach County.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Diaz, you have 60 seconds to respond to that question as well.
Once again, thank you. Yes, absolutely support that proposition as far as doing a reevaluation every so often. And once again, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Freeman. I don't know what his full background is. But again, I've been involved in some serious stressful situations that require that could have helped with some therapy. I've been involved in 3 shootings, unfortunately, 3 times combat recipient of the Combat Cross. And I can tell you, other than one time, I don't ever remember receiving any treatment whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. I've also lost 2 officers in the line of duty on my watch. And I had another friend of mine, a real close friend of mine, who was shot and killed in the line of duty, which I was assigned to actually set up his perimeter and catch the bad guys that did it. And again, not even a phone call the next day to see how I was feeling. So yes, I am 100% on board with that.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. We're going to move on to another audience question. Over the years, there has been some discussion regarding the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office taking over the law enforcement duties of the Palm Beach County School District Police. Would you propose that the Sheriff's Office take over the law enforcement duties of the Palm Beach County School District Police? Mr. Freeman, we're going to start with you for that question.
No, I do not. Just like I do not propose or support the sheriff office taking over municipalities. Because what has happened is when the sheriff take over municipalities and the school board, if he was to take it over, you lose that personal relationship with your police chief and your police officers. You know, and with this sheriff who thinks and feel and believe that he's untouchable, you know, that is, in my opinion, that is a bad combination to have the sheriff office overseeing the school districts as well as communities. But under Freeman's administration, if there was a need for it based on a budget issue, you know, yes, I'd be more than happy to step in and take over that service. But only until then, if that was to happen. But other than that, no, I'm not interested in taking over the school board.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. The question is now yours, Mr. Diaz.
100% agree with everything that Freeman just said. I'd much rather support, train, and assist with our specialty units any municipality in need than to take over that municipality, because anytime you do that, you're taking resources away from the county. It doesn't show it on paper, but it is a fact, folks. So therefore, I would do everything in my power to make sure that that municipality stays afloat and give them the assistance that they need whenever it's needed. However, if the commissioners or the councilmen, men or women, or the city mayor or city manager, if they can't provide the service that the citizens require and deserve and ask me to step in, then yes, I would definitely entertain taking over a municipality. And I don't like to use the word takeover. It's more of a merger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. And finally, Mr. Gauger, your response to that question.
Yeah, you spoke specifically about schools. You know, this has been considered in the past, and it wasn't a popular idea. The educational process and those involved in running the educational system have been a little hesitant and felt that the sheriff's office would not be a good fit. Personally, I think they're wrong. We have an opportunity to adjust and assign the right people to the schools. And, you know, but the important thing is building the partnerships and working together and having that partnership whenever it's needed and getting into the schools, working in the schools, We've trained in schools. We've trained for the active shooters, and we brought in fire rescue, and that was that partnership stuff again. The partnerships work. We don't have to take it over, but we should be hand in hand working together.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. And thank you all for your responses. We're going to move on. I believe we have time for another audience question. In recent years, society has come to an understanding that minority communities have a unique and sometimes strenuous relationship with law enforcement agencies. What would you do as the Sheriff of Palm Beach County to enhance and improve the relationship and the connectivity between the largest law enforcement agency in the county and the several minority communities in Palm Beach County? And for this question, Mr. Diaz, we're going to begin with you.
Thank you for that question. First of all, I've always said over and over again, if you look at my platform and my past speeches, is that I truly believe that an agency should reflect to a certain extent the community that it serves. That being said, Lake Worth is a prime example. So we have a large Haitian community in Lake Worth with yet minimal Haitian or Creole speaking officers. I want to extend that opportunity to those who qualify so that nobody understands, because nobody really understands your culture better than yourself, that being from Creole or Hispanic or African American, whatever the case may be. It doesn't mean that we can't put a white officer in a black neighborhood. That's not what I'm saying at all in any way, shape, or form, because I work many, many black neighborhoods. So that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to do everything in our power to ensure that we have cultural diversity and that we do our training for officers to understand the different cultures, because you can't approach every situation the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Mr. Gauger, the question is yours.
Sure. I would explain that it's a community policing effort again. And we've done this in our neighborhoods, in the minority neighborhoods. We built those relationships. We worked together. We were invited into homes for dinner. We were invited to the kids' schools to see their plays. We developed the athletic programs. We worked with the parents. When I saw that there was a lot of very young teenage girls getting pregnant, I brought in Planned Parenthood. For the girls, I brought in Healthy Mothers, Healthy Boys, who had programs to work and just build that relationship. Get to know the people, have the same deputies work the same areas, you know, and make sure those deputies learn how to communicate and not just sit in their cars. Get out. The athletic programs that we did in some of those neighborhoods helped as well.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. And finally, Mr. Freeman, the question is yours.
I totally agree with what both candidates have said about that. But I also feel and believe that sheriffs and chiefs and those in management and law enforcement shall hold those subgroup of officers accountable for their action when they allow our profession to be painted with this broad brush that there's just no good police officers. And it's by a subgroup of them that is causing this disconnect with communities that I've served, communities that I live in, you know. So we as leaders in law enforcement, we have to hold those recalcitrant employees accountable for their action and take actions against them and be unapologetic about it. And if we have to terminate, suspend, do whatever we have to do to correct that behavior so that the community would know that there are no cover-ups here. We're being transparent and we're holding everybody accountable. As your next sheriff, I'm going to demand that you hold me accountable for my actions, because I am going to hold my staff accountable for their action providing quality law enforcement services.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. And so we have time for one last audience question. And here it is. Although citizen review boards are not part of the statutory construct and the general laws of Florida, do you believe that citizen complaints should be received by the sheriff's office and by policing agencies? And how do you propose that citizens have a meaningful and effective way of communicating with their law enforcement agency and having a voice in the law enforcement agency? We're going to start with you, Mr. Gauger.
Okay, that's quite easy. I had regional meetings with representatives from all the different communities. We had North, South, Central, and West. And I met with those groups. And they went back and spoke to the neighborhoods and the groups that they represented. But they brought in issues, they brought in problems. And that, not only that, but I wasn't an executive that just sat in an office. I went out there to those community meetings. I made an appearance. I got to know people, first names, and built that friendship. And it was easy for them to call me if there was issues. And that's the way I like to train my officers. I said earlier, I taught community and human relations to police officers for years. I taught that class at the college. And that's the important thing, teaching them how to interact and communicate.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Next, we'll hear from you, Mr. Diaz.
So transparency, right? So it's public record. Anytime we do an investigation, regardless of what the situation is that we did the investigation under, I have no problem making those investigations public to the public. But more important, as that same board that I talked about, bringing them in from community, is to ensure that they also have a voice, and that voice can be one-on-one with me on a quarterly basis. And if there's an issue of concern that they don't understand why the investigation went the way it went, then I'm happy to explain to them the facts on the investigation, but at the same time, be open-minded and listen to them as to what their opinions are and learn from them, because we're not always perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't be in the problem that we're in today.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. And finally, Mr. Freeman.
Well, my response is going to be very, very short on that. I totally agree with what Mr. Diaz just said. But when it comes to being the liaison for the sheriff office, I am going to be the liaison between the sheriff office and the community, because I am asking the community to elect me as their transparent, accountable sheriff. I don't want the community to talk to my number 2 or my number 3. They elected me, not my number 2 or my number 3. So they should be hearing from me, and I should be hearing from them directly.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman, and thank you all for your responses to our audience questions and our pre-screen questions. We're now going to move to the closing statements. In your closing statement, please tell us why you are the best candidate and what differentiates you from your opponents. You will have 1 minute, and for our closing statements, Mr. Gauger, we're going to begin with you.
Okay, thank you. It's very simple. Look at my history. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at what I built. Look how I built all those programs. And it was not only in law enforcement, but I was involved in civic duties in all kinds of different organizations that made a change in the quality of life. That's what's important. I served on the Urban League. I served on Families First. I served in Rotary. I got out there and I encouraged my officers to also belong to those organizations. That's the difference, and that's why. Why am I different? I have the experience, I have the budgetary experience, and I have the history of holding people accountable, even more so when the person I worked for didn't. So look at my history and you will see that I deserve and I will make a difference in that sheriff's office.
Thank you, Mr. Gauger. Your closing statement, Mr. Diaz.
Well, my primary race here is not against Mr. Freeman, it's against Mr. Gauger. And those of you that are home listening to this right now, you heard a whole lot of I on everything that sounds good and went well. And then they on everything that goes wrong. The fact of the matter is 50 years is way too long to be there. Number 2 guy for the last 16 years. And now he's criticizing the current sheriff and everything that's going wrong in the sheriff's department when he, by his own words, said that he ran the sheriff's office for the last 16 years. So he is part of the problem. He is the problem. That makes me the better candidate because I have a fresh perspective and leadership. I have the right education, the right drive, and the right platform. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
You're a fucking asshole.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Candidates, let's stay focused on our candidate forum. For your closing statement, Mr. Freeman, you're going to have 60 seconds. Please tell us why you're the best candidate and what differentiates you from your opponents.
What makes me the better candidate? I want to reduce recidivism here in Palm Beach County and save lives and reduce crime. And we're going to do that by working with apprenticeship programs and educational programs that are willing to come into the sheriff's office and train those men and women in the trade or to enhance a skill or a trade they already have. We're also going to work with employers that are willing to come in the sheriff's office, whether it be every 30 days or every 90 days, to hold job fairs in the sheriff's office, because many of those men and women are going to, when they transition back in our communities, they're going to be on probation. And if they don't have a job to attend to meet that financial obligation of paying that probation, they're going to reoffend. So the goal here is to change lives, put families back together, and so that you and I and no one else will be a victim of their behavior, because the goal is to have them on the right track. And what makes me the better candidate as well as it is just time for a change. 54 years combined with 54 years of Mike Gauger, 54 years of Bradshaw being in law enforcement. They've been in law enforcement 1 year less than I'm old. They started their career around the Richard Nixon days. It is just time for a change. It's time for fresh new ideas. It's time for a fresh wave of leadership. And I am that agent of change to take.
Okay. Mr. Freeman, your time is up. And I know that some of you are using smaller devices, so you can't see the full screen on the timer. But thank you to all of you. And thank you to all of our candidates who have participated in tonight's forum. And thank you to When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad for hosting this forum. I also thank you, our audience, for attending this evening. I hope that this forum was informative as you prepare to vote. Join us next week on July 30th at the Riviera Beach Marina for our candidate forum, including the state attorney race, public defender race, and County Commission District 7. Finally, I want to remind everyone that early voting begins August 10th and runs through August 18th, and the primary election is August 20th. If you have requested your ballot by mail, they were mailed last week, so please be sure to return them as soon as possible. Again, thank you to our candidates. Thank you to When We All Vote Palm Beach County Voting Squad. And thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in for this candidate forum. You all have a great night.